It's reminded that it's been suggested that every character, symbol and archetype in every story represents an aspect of our own self, our own psyche. There's another Sufi story. There was an old woman standing at her window when she saw a dervish coming down the road. He appeared to be weary beyond endurance. His turban was askew. His patchwork robe was soiled, and the straw sandals on his feet were ragged. The old widow dashed out of her house and accosted the dervish, stating, "It is said that if one serves a venerable dervish, they will be recompensed in a manifold way. Please come and let me take care of you." And so the dervish came in, and the old woman served him, making him warm soup, repairing his sandals, cleaning his robes. So it was not long before he was brought back to a state of what we might call well-being once again. But the old widow had an only son who was called Abdulla. But Abdulla had never had any opportunities in his life, having been brought up in an almost world of poverty, having the need to work from the earliest age to try to put bread on the table for his mother and himself. But after some while, when the dervish was now restored to some state of well-being, he said to the old widow, "Even though I appear to be impoverished, I have a source of wealth, and if you will allow it, I will take your son and teach him what I know." The old widow very gladly gave Abdullah over into the dervish's care, and they began travels which took them far and wide. Along the way, Abdullah learned a great deal from the dervish. But then came a day when the dervish said to Abdullah, "We have now reached the end of a road, and if the time is right, a great treasure can be revealed to you. Can you face this fearlessly?" And Abdullah replied that he would try to do his best. So the dervish spoke what we might call some kind of incantation, and at that moment a great chasm opened up in front of them. The dervish said to Abdullah, "You must descend into this chasm, where you will find a treasure beyond your imagining. But your task is to bring back the iron candlestick that you will find there. So Abdulla descended into what seemed to be an endless void, but in fact was not so, because it was not long before he saw in front of his eyes a treasure beyond his belief, and he could not help himself. He took the gold and trinkets and jewels and stuffed them into his pockets and up his sleeves. But then he espied the iron candlestick, and he thought to himself that he might as well take it out to give to the dervish as he'd requested. But when Abdullah came out of that void, he found himself standing at the doorway of his widowed mother's house. The gold and treasures that he'd hidden in his sleeves disappeared, and all that remained was the iron candlestick, and the dervish was no longer to be seen. But Abdullah took the candlestick and lit one candle of the 12 that constituted the candlestick, and to his great surprise, a dervish emerged, and whirling just a little, the dervish dropped a small silver coin at Abdullah's feet. So Abdullah and his mother immediately lit the other candles, and each one revealed a dervish who whirled and dropped a small silver coin at their feet. They realized that they could live comfortably on what the candlestick brought for them. But Abdullah could not forget the treasure that he had seen in the abyss when he descended. So, taking the candlestick, he set out on a quest to find that place. But although he traveled far and wide, he could no longer locate the place that he had been. But even though he felt that his quest was fruitless, his thirst for wealth became insatiable, and so he continued his search and his seeking. One day, that seeking brought him to a place of great grandeur, and to his very great surprise, there was the dervish, now living in what appeared to be great opulence, with a great number of disciples around him. But when Abdullah came into the presence of the dervish admonished him, "You ungrateful being, but because you have carried with you and returned the iron candlestick, I will show you what it can really do." So the dervish took a stick and struck the iron candlestick, and immediately 12 dervishes appeared, spinning and bringing with them a treasure which even surpassed that which Abdullah had seen. And the dervish said to Abdullah, even though you have been ungrateful, but because you have returned the candlestick, I will give you a gift to take with you. And so, striking the candlestick again, the dervish brought into appearance a wealth, a camel, laden with gold for Abdullah to take back with him. But Abdullah's greed was still great, and in the night he not only left with the camel and its treasure, but also hiding the candlestick in his saddle bags. But when Abdullah returned to his mother's abode and took out the candlestick, and as he had seen the dervish do, strike it with a stick, he had omitted to recognize that the action of the dervish had been in a certain way which he had been unable to emulate, and instead of the dervishes emerging and bringing with them a great treasure, the dervishes appeared and gathered to them all the gold, the camel, and the candlestick, and disappeared. Abdullah was again impoverished, but even though the thirst remained, and he could never forget, he lived life of continuing poverty. Remembering that all characters, symbols and archetypes in all stories are representative of aspects of our own psyche. How would you interpret this story? The widow, Abdullah, the dervish, the candlestick, the treasure, the characters and symbols and archetypes. How would you translate this?